It's just this time immemorial cycle of destroy, rebuild, and siphon wealth every step of the way with that. I'm just wondering, after this amount of destruction sweeps through the world, who's going to be responsible for rebuilding it? Because I know in Ukraine already that they were talking with BlackRock and Vanguard to come in to do the financing for all of the rebuild after this thing concludes. The world we live in right now and the way it's moving, instead of looking at the distraction which they want you to see front and center, however you believe in whatever you think about that, I'm just going to leave that as the distraction that is front and center because it truly is. But take a moment to look in the periphery of our world and see how many things have gone awry in terms of economy, food production, society, and then ask yourself if you think what we're seeing now is a distraction for the collapse. Because as I've been working on the Adapt 2030 channel for these last years, I kept seeing this slow motion train wreck, and I was thinking, it just cannot continue without somebody finally noticing that something has come off and the rivets have busted, keeping metal parts together, whatever it is. That eventually it's going to be so noticeable that the world will wake up and say, whoa, we have a huge problem here. Now that's if everything continued in its working fashion. There would have to be the blame from somebody because you can't have entire global systems break down and nobody notice and then just say, well, I don't know, it just broke down one day. But I think we have the culprit to explain away every single thing that will emerge from this point in terms of reasons why everything has broken down. The everything that has broken down was already there anyway. This just gives the excuse so you don't have any culprits. You don't have any fingers to point. It's just, it was because of the war. It was because of the closure of the Straits of Hormuz. It was because of the this, that, or the other. They stopped manufacturing and sending us stuff. But Gerald Celente, who I'm going to be getting on an interview with, he put out a tweet today earlier that said, as I've said, World War III is on. It only becomes official after the first nuke strike. Gerald wishes everybody an excellent day. I watched him with Daniela Camboni on Stansberry Research, and he broke down, man, when she's like, yeah, Gerald, you called that. The realization of it actually hitting our world just made him freeze and break down to tears for just a moment before he could recompose himself. Because their reports, the Trends Journal, if you are privy into that and have a copy of it, for the last two Trends Journals, they're going, yeah, it's definitely, there's too much broken on the world stage right now. It's not coming back. They tried to get their big old global conflagration with the Russia-Ukraine thing. It didn't work, so they were going to move to greener pastures to get it done. Because I really say this, everything is on the precipice at the moment of full collapse anyway without all of these other things happening. And the way that the word Great Reset, remember Klaus Schwab, Great Reset? Remember that was a hot topic for a minute about a year and a half ago. And that suddenly disappeared off the lexicon radar. But you're seeing this Great Reset marching forward. And as we go through tonight, we can talk about some of the changes to be expected in terms of how AI might be used after this, whatever finishes up. And that's the only way we could possibly allow humanity to move forward. We have to put it in the arms of AI because humans are non-trustable. They're too angry. They're too vicious toward each other. So let's just do everything with AI. And then AI can redivide the country maps like they did after World War I and World War II. AI can now create a new world map section to create the most peaced and harmonious with all the peoples together. And also the AI can maintain the 15-minute cities, to guarantee that there's enough supply that is distributed equally across the planet, that everybody has enough.
Today, the demand for gold continues to flourish globally. History proves that fiat paper money is designed to go to zero through inflation, whereas gold has intrinsic value in which it maintains forever. Paper money is a debt instrument. Gold is an asset of wealth in its own right. It does not depend upon any governments, corporations, or individuals' promise to repay. ITM Trading has spent the last 27 plus years developing a team of expert researchers and analysts to make this possible. Simply put, we build strategies which are historically proven to protect your wealth and assets through any economic downturn or currency collapse. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call 866-834-1422. That's 866-834-1422, or go to learn.itmtrading.com/MIAC and keep watching Mountain High Time and Mini Ice Age Conversations if you know what's good for you.
And nobody will go without, especially in the 15-minute cities. So after this, I am going to say they're definitely going to try to push the world to allow everything to be AI controlled under one global governance structure, including the economy, which will probably take a digital form. I'm just saying. But anyway, Ransom, thank you for joining tonight. I know we got a ton of ideas to roll through, especially with the SEC dropping the lawsuit against Ripple. So you know we're going to digital settlements on that. Ooh, anybody who's holding XRP, hang on to the clothesline and a hurricane.
Yeah. I think what I was last hearing you talk about is, all roads do lead to Rome there. You said it exactly. That is exactly their plan from their own lips, from the AI control to the 15-minute cities. And I'm getting a chance here where I live to see it being created and built in real time. The governor of Texas has decided that they're going to build a wall between the state of New Mexico and the state of Texas, which they've already started. They've started working on. We won't build one for the border of the United States, but we will build it in between states. And I think that really has nothing to do with people coming from south of the border and everything to do with the fact that El Paso and Las Cruces are both 15-minute cities to be. There's plans in the works. There has been for a long time for this area, all the way back. I'm sure you remember the concept for the North American corridor that got canceled a couple of times from local governments, but they never gave up on that idea. And basically what they're doing is they're converting Interstate 25 to become that North American corridor. And yeah, it's really weird. And they're claiming it's because of the flow of traffic from south of the border. But I have a feeling that has really nothing to do with it. The way that it's being designed is what we've talked about many times. It's the beginning of the infrastructure for major cities. And keep in mind that if you're not familiar with the area, Juarez, El Paso, and Las Cruces are soon to become a megalopolis, which is 100 miles of straight businesses, commercial real estate, and housing. So just all in a row. So not like New York where you have skyscrapers, but just complete development along the interstate. That's where it gets controlled, tracked, and traced, because I'm sure you've seen some of the new surveillance cameras that they've set up on all the interstates. They're these giant, I'm not sure exactly how tall they are, maybe 30-foot poles with cameras, license plate readers, facial recognition, all that stuff. We're in the ongoing building phase. And the reason that they stopped using the Great Reset is because we're in the middle of it. They don't want you thinking about it at all now. You're supposed to be distracted with all the wars around the world that are really only one war. This is the last war that they're trying. They're even using the old, name of it, the war to end all wars. People are throwing that around already. But there are some really trippy articles out there that they're not even trying to hide it really too much anymore or distract you. Instead, it's become the main event, the main stage for you to watch it crumble right before your eyes. So right here's a good one. And this is ironic because I came up with a new theory, possibly, My son is going to one of the education centers trying to get a certificate for the government so he can be a good citizen. Today he went to a skills development seminar or something, and they were handing out free books. One of them was 1984 George Orwell. You know, on the back of the book, it says, "The party told you to reject the evidence of your own eyes and ears. It was their final, most essential command." And then think about this. Here's the article right here, ironically, going on at the same time as educators are sneaking books to people that are probably soon to be banned because we live in this exact description of the future. Biographers of the legendary writer's wife says darkness that runs through 1984 is a reflection of his soul. Well, he was a eugenicist, and he was part of those circles that believed in some really weird stuff. And just like the cosmic rule that you got to tell someone before you do things to them, that's exactly what one of these books was. I think the other one they gave him was Fahrenheit 451, which is ironic. I've made a video about that because that's happening in a digital format. And if you've seen the recreation of their movie based on that book, in the future, that's now, language was boiled down to one world language, and that was the emojis, because they weren't allowed to use words, and you couldn't have books, you couldn't own paintings, you couldn't have any thoughts of your own. Oh, ain't that nice? That's nice. This is something that I mentioned to you a couple of years ago, and it turns out I'm not the only one that thinks the math of the Olmec calendar, which they're calling the Mayan calendar in this article and several others, is actually off by about 12 years. There's no argument that the amount of years in it, that's 5,126 years. The argument is that it's possible, based on the accurate depictions of each eclipse and where it was going to be in that area, that actually it was 12 years off. And 2023 is actually the end of the Mayan calendar. Not saying that they thought that the world was going to end or anything like that. But this, according to a bunch of people, it's a growing number, say the mathematics points out to 2023, December 21st. So that will be the end of their calendar. So it wasn't 2012, by the way. It was now, or it possibly is now. Maybe that's not an accident that they miscalculated the original spread of their idea of the calendar, but it seems that the calendar actually ends in December of this year and starts anew in 2024, which is ironic, another divisible by 12, 24 year.
Yeah, do we see the devil comet coming in at this time as well? A colossal city-sized comet with horns, and an explosive volcano is heading towards Earth. The devil comet. No, I don't have the perihelion on that one right now, but sure looks like it could fill in. Can you imagine the arrival of this thing? And also at Ransom, I sent you that pet goat image as well, with a sinking aircraft carrier and a mushroom cloud in the background. And I'm thinking, wow, how, on time is all of this happening? Because, that one point you made up of the draft, even putting them through boot camp or whatever, basic training, just the way everybody's been brought up today, I'm not sure how effective they would be either. If you're thinking about viability of a fighting force, and you look at people raised on video games and very little exercise and how they don't play outside, how the vilification of any kind of firearm, even for hunting, has been done, like percentage of our population that's ever picked up and fired anything is, going to be borderline 50%, zero. And then you put them over there against a hardened force, it's going to be a Charlie Foxtrot, as they say. So I'm looking at that, and how many of you are willing to go overseas to fight? Are you willing to send your daughters and your sons over there, smiling and cheering the entire way, gleefully sending them off at the airport, and your daughters as well? Because you want that, it's coming. People are so into this thing, it's almost like they're watching a video game, but it is going to slap you across the face so hard and rip your families apart. What I really see is both sides trying to push this Armageddon thing and make it happen. You think it's going to be fun to go through that? Talking about Japan. And I traveled there before. The exchange rate was like 80 to a US dollar. Now it's around 150 right now. You think your American dollar is buying you more and you want to run into this thing headlong and just spend more money and print more money, telling us how we're going to go to war across 5 different fronts and we're going to print money to pay for it. You don't think it's going to be a extreme inflationary event back in the United States either? And then they had the London Stock Exchange halt trading because of some cyber attack. And you could see it everywhere. It's starting to contract. At least the analysis that I've done so far is to stop the oil flowing to China so China implodes from the inside and their gold-backed currency, which is the cornerstone of the new BRICS, commodities trading, gold-backed settlements, would stop for some period of time. But you got to realistically, think about if you're going to be cheering your sons and daughters getting sent off to multiple front wars just because you think it's a cool idea that you saw on the news somewhere. Because that's what they've goaded you into supporting. Because the entire world's gone mad. And I want to say one thing about electromagnetic activity changes and what occurred on the 7th of October. Our planet, the solar system, the sun was behind us, and the 4 gas giants lining up into their maximum parallel toroidal field interplay of a second magnetic field in our solar system will occur October 23rd in 2024. But as we pass through that field, which is amplifying, currently at its maximum state for this year, not at the maximum state for the entire cycle of this, we pulled through that state of electromagnetic upsetting, for a better term, the same day all of this stuff kicked off in the Middle East. They've done an enormous amount of studies with rats in different electromagnetic field chambers, and the lower the electromagnetic field goes, the angrier those rats became. But we went through that electromagnetic intensity of as high of a disruption as it could be for this year, right when all that stuff kicked off on the 7th. And I am looking at that going, they were riding on top of a natural cycle to get a wider and a greater outcome on your emotions pulling through. They understood that electromagnetic disruption during those days had something to do with amplifying the human emotion and bending it.
I absolutely see the same thing. We don't have any skin in the game as Americans, so to speak. It's on the other side of the world. Intelligences have had their hand in every single one of these conflicts for a really long time. And they go out of their way to go to specific areas that have ethnic tensions, political tensions, whatever they can use to cause turmoil. And they put assets on both sides of the conflict. As we've seen in the U.S., which, by the way, things are getting really weird here. You can see that the hand's in it, and we shouldn't get fooled again. The entire stretch between 2001 and all the way up to a more famous Benghazi incident, and also weapons from North Korea. Is that real or not? Who knows? But it's going to be used to entangle the lines. And if you've noticed, the entire fleet is, basically in 3 spots. The Black Sea there, on the other side of that in the Mediterranean, and then we're over by Taiwan. So you can see the exact locations of where they're going to spread it out from. Let's skip a little topic and talk about the degradation of our own society over here, and the reason we shouldn't even be worrying about any of that stuff, and we shouldn't be involved in entangling ourselves with foreign affairs, playing around with assets around the world to cause geopolitical strife. And what does that mean for us as Americans? Well, it means a crash of our economy. And then you got what's going on basically all over the world is the setup for World War III. And they're already setting up where they can point the fingers and how they can sway the public to go over to their side of thinking. I'm more interested in helping other Americans get through the bad times that are coming. Don't forget that they already planned this. And every couple of years, they make sure that we remember that they planned for all of this. with their doomsday vaults that have all of the good heirloom seeds in there. They're not keeping those GMO seeds that they're, mass producing now. Good stuff in these vaults. They are planning on getting out of the way and letting the reset happen, just full swing now. But this is the real kicker that I wanted to point out. There's an increasing number of desperate people that have given up on life. And they've given up on life because of the things that we're talking about, the mass distraction that demoralizes and dehumanizes human beings at the human level. And you wonder why people that have issues or, addictions or other things that already are weighing down on their soul get desperate, and they end up on the streets of Philadelphia, of Seattle, of LA. I mean, it's all over the place. You see the Walking Dead, the zombies walking around, and there seems to be no real mechanism to try to stop this from happening. Instead, they're increasing it. But Canada's come up with an answer, and I did predict this. If you remember, we did a show before, and I was talking about how Canada, they have made it where you can volunteer to off yourself, and they're doing this in Europe too. Canada, what I was talking about is they were offering the terminally ill state assistance so that they could end the pain. That's one thing. If you want to argue one way or the other about that, I ultimately think that's a human being's choice, but I don't like the idea of state-sponsored offing of people. But the governments have a plan for you. They want to help you help yourself not exist. And in Europe, they've just offered it to anybody, little miniature chambers that you get in, and then it peacefully takes you away. But Canada has come up with a foolproof way to get rid of the homeless and addicted population. They're just going to offer them the same thing they do to terminally ill. This is going to spread country by country. That's where we're at, where governments are offering addicts to just go away. And people that are sad, you could just go away. If you're sick, you could just go away. What did Aleister Crowley call it? The age of Horus. So finally, all of the people like him can do as they wilt. And I see that happening exactly right now. And those are those people you were talking about. We're back in the Crusades. We're back in the Middle Ages. No religion is innocent throughout time. That's obvious. Just if you know history, not one of them has been innocent. And they're not going to continue to be innocent as long as you have people that think that they control the future's lives of the peons, which is the people under them, and that they have the right to rule based on their bloodlines or whatever they base it on. We're going to have these problems. Their mouths are watering because they see it, that they finally have an opportunity for their one world order. And George Bush Sr., unfortunately, he didn't get to see his promised land. But you remember, he said, I think finally we have a real chance of seeing a new world order so that the rule of law rules and not the rule of the jungle.
Who gets to rebuild after the destruction? Do you think BlackRock will be in line for that? Because we see the same cycle. It's just silliness any way you look at it. Go through something, destroy it. Banks come in and rebuild it. Companies come in and rebuild it. Whether you're talking about Halliburton and BlackRock currently, further back after World War II, with Conoco and other oil companies coming in to set up the Middle East after the North African campaigns in Tunisia and Algeria. It's just this time immemorial cycle of destroy, rebuild, and siphon wealth every step of the way with that. I'm just wondering, after this amount of destruction sweeps through the world, who's going to be responsible for rebuilding it? Because I know in Ukraine already that they were talking with BlackRock and Vanguard to come in to do the financing for all of the rebuild after this thing concludes. Where does that take us? And that whole thing about ending your own days in a machine, you just have to wonder, along with, the advanced technologies we have currently, if that would somehow be able to capture your soul in there. Obviously, you mentioned addicts, etc. Would they even know they're in a soul-capturing machine? And then what would be done with their soul? Because, you look at that point, then, you've given your soul literally to something else. You got to wonder, some of these technologies and these ways out for humanity, are they really ways out or are they traps? How advanced is the technology on our planet? And these things we see from Boston Dynamics and the cool robots doing parkour and jumping backwards and doing backflips and stuff, that's 50-year-old technology. What they can do today, I'm sure, there's cyborgs have already blended in with us. And, what you're seeing currently, even in science fiction movies, is what they have at the level of today. They're trying to feed you that it's in the future. That's the whole thing that's insidious, is they're always trying to feed you that it's the future, but everything already has occurred or is occurring right now. The Operation High Jump and electrogravitics anti-gravity technology, how that's going to be unveiled somehow during this global conflict, that will be the new energy system, because we know that the green energy with the solar panels and the windmills, that's not going to work for enough power. But if somehow these craft were to crash and we could re-engineer it, that could suddenly be a new power source for the new world. And you can already see the new world is planned, but it needs a new power source, but oil's probably not going to do it. Because you could see during this time that all the oil infrastructure across the planet is going to be damaged, probably on purpose. Because that way, most of these OPEC countries that are now aligned in the BRICS trading bloc, if you can wipe out all their oil infrastructure, they'll have no revenue. And if oil's not really a thing to trade anymore, that could be a commodity to offset, they would be forced back to the U.S. dollar. And also it would take them 50 years plus to recover. So think about distraction is what we're seeing in the Middle East. But what we're really seeing is a dollar versus de-dollarization campaign going on across the planet. This is a cornered animal, the United States, going into a collapsing economy and hyperinflation, and the world throwing the reins off of control of the dollar. And they want to keep that power, and they're going to do anything in their means to do so. They're going to burn the planet down to keep that dollar intact. This is truly what we're witnessing. It might appear that it's something else, but in the grand scheme of things, it's incredible simple of what we're seeing right now. Dollar versus BRICS. Now, we have to come to a new energy system for the new world to evolve and the new world to continue. We need a new form of energy to power the factories that don't pollute. Because you might think it's destruction and, oh, how terrible would that be? Those people there, they're not going to have an economy and it's going to take forever. And, it's going to cost them so much money to rebuild. And could they ever rebuild? And da-da-da-da. The answer is absolutely they'll rebuild. And it's going to require an interest payment to get the loans for them to rebuild. You think people are cheering this war on stuff on either side. That's nothing compared to the bankers jumping, probably banging their heads on the ceiling as high as they're jumping, supporting this thing, because they know every single explosion they see on the TV and echoing sound of reverberating shock waves means more money in their pocket. Every reverberating shock wave is an extra 0.1% in interest that they'll need to raise the rates. 8% is now what you need to pay for a home. I'm wondering what it'll be for rebuilding loans, because the higher their interest rates go, the more that they're going to also be able to charge for rebuilt loans through BlackRock and Vanguard. This world's being set up to collapse and mask the collapse. That was already ongoing anyway. Like I started in the beginning of the first hour. All of these things were in the collapse mode anyway. It's just like the fourth turning. We're in the 80th year of this fourth turning. We're at the winter phase of the fourth turning. It was all in the downturning trend anyway. So what better way to mask it is destroy everything and then rebuild it. And again, that follows the fourth turning. The spring phase is when everything's growing again, because there's so much money poured into it that everything's growing after it was destroyed, because there's so much money being thrown around to rebuild. And it's strange how World War I was the same in Europe. Destroy, rebuild, golden age. How much money was floating around before the Great Depression in America? That was a direct result of all that destruction in Europe and the rebuilding. And America had a lot of the steel plants and all these kind of things that they needed for rebuilding in Europe. So, of course, the American economy was rocking because we were giving them supplies to rebuild Europe. after we were also destroyed it. World War II, the exact same. How do you think Japan got all of its materials? Do you think the materials just magically came from China? Not at that time. They sure didn't. They came from the United States to rebuild Japan. But the amount of money that was flowing into America for rebuilding after World War II was astounding. The world you know today was built off of that money flowing back into America for raw materials to rebuild not only Europe, but Asia. So can you imagine now, when the entire planet's rocked by destruction, who's going to have the money to rebuild it? China. They're going to be the ones with the steel plants this time. They'll be the ones with the automotive manufacturing this time. Now, somehow China will be spared. I really believe a lot of destruction will not be in China this time. Huge amount of destruction across the United States. Probably not too much in South America. That place is never really affected too much. But you're going to watch the switcheroo, like they've always said, oh, the wars never touched American soil in World War I or World War II. But if China's left alone, along with Russia, then they would be the ones that would rebuild. And then all of a sudden, the BRICS currency makes sense because all that money is going to flow in because they have all the hard manufacturing that we left go in America. But this new world that's going to be built upon will not be built upon fossil fuels again. It's going to have to be something different.
Mountain High Time, 2 hours of an organization to the madness, discussing the ever-changing dynamics of being both physically and mentally prepared for a plethora of possible outcomes to our future and present. A look into the latest technologies, new scientific discoveries, and how they might be used in connection to the human domain and controlling it, ancient cultures and places. Be warned. This is an opinionated look through headlines, guests that are not afraid to question the narrative, a little bit of crazy ramblings of a stoner conspiracy factist that pushes constitutional concepts. The place and the time are the same, another dimension we call Mountain High Time. Saturdays 10 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Mountain High Time, right here on Revolution.radio, where information never sleeps and truth breaks the spell. Imagine, if you will, a glimpse into the possible outcome of a million mistakes. What you are about to watch is a nightmare. It is not meant to be prophetic. It need not happen. It's the fervent and urgent prayer of all men of goodwill that it never shall happen. But in this place, in this moment, it does happen. In the midst of it comes unexpectedly over the phone the announcement of the President of the United States, the warning from the very top declaring a state of emergency of suspected enemy missiles approaching. It's anyone's guess where they might land. What city will be obliterated? How many could be lost? And last but not least, will it be me? Will it be my family, friends, my square inch on the map? Minutes go by and nothing. Right as you exhale a breath of relief, an instant wave of horror treks down your spine and a sinking feeling in the pits of your stomach. Just then, the power goes out. The only light you see is the glow of your phone. Shining in your face, the icons of terror. Low battery, and even more frightening, the symbol for connection to information and loved ones gone. You try the landline in your office, desperate to contact family. Nothing at all, just a bone-chilling empty silence. Panic-stricken, you blindly forage for your car keys. Success. Something in this nightmare of a day has gone right. Now it's a desperate mad dash for your car. Your mind now in a near intellectual paralysis. Logic a struggle as you cope with a Gatling gun barrage of horrific ideas of what your family might be going through in this very moment. Miraculously, your car starts and you begin your seemingly apocalyptic drive to locate your kin. As you pass the first stop sign, the sight of civic decay is already bearing its nasty head as you speed past fights in the streets, looting, and a complete halt of any semblance of an evolved civilization. To your right, a large fire. As angry, fear-filled citizens with their arms full of grocery items run from what used to be your local food market ran by a mom and pop's couple now collapses into a bonfire of dreams. Because of the commotion, your attention span has been stolen. Now before your automobile is a violent crowd. They have now surrounded your car. banging on the metal, bashing at the glass, screaming incoherently. What just a second ago was the road to salvation, now a deadly trap of circumstance and fear blocking your escape. This can't be happening, repeatedly echoing in your head as you start to mumble the phrase in a shrieking, inaudible, childlike tone to yourself. The trepidation now filling your lungs like a poison fog, suffocating and smothering in its certainty. Just then, as your heart and soul seem to be having synergistic perturbations, an alarm blares, overwhelming your senses. Immediately you recall the warning of missiles. You close your eyes and expect the end. But the alarm morphs into a sweet, familiar beckoning of your alarm clock. You open your eyes and switch off the welcoming timepiece. A warm filling of relief as you realize your family is safe in their beds, and no pending doom is written in the stars today. For a split second, you ponder the poor people of your vision, and it reinforces your confidence that you have already prepared for the any scenario. You have peace of mind your children will eat and thrive, because you invested in their future to give some stability if any break in the normality of life happens. You invested in heaven's harvest. The you in this story was a fictional you. But do you get the feeling something unthinkable is going to happen soon? I sure do. The problem is we probably won't see it coming. One morning you'll wake up and the world will be a much different place. Don't panic, prepare. Smart folks are investing in emergency food now. A wise man once said, "It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it." Heaven's Harvest is the nation's leader in emergency food storage. It's the only investment you get 100% of your money for, even better than gold. Survival experts recommend the 3-month emergency food kit. Go to heavensharvest.com, use the code ADAPT at checkout and save a mind-blowing 15%.